Hello and welcome to week 6 of Usability Principles and Practice. I am Dr. Chris Parker and we are talking about user interface design this week. Particularly, we're going to start with this video talking about what makes a website, the common elements and some design considerations, before in part 2 we take a deep dive into what is effective navigation. How do you get people around your website in a way which has speed and matches their needs and desires. So by the end of this video, you will be able to describe the most prominent elements of contemporary websites for consumer-facing businesses and be aware of key considerations for designing contemporary websites. So how are we going to do that? We're going to start by looking at web page components. This may be the first time you've designed a website or really thought about designing a website. So let's understand what makes a website. Now, websites are made up of small blocks, so even though it's one thing, the website, or maybe the web page, everything is from pieces. You have text, you have quotes, you have small bits that are stitched together to make the entire ensemble. So when you build your house, you don't just design everything at once, you take existing tool bits and combine them together. If you ever use Squarespace, this is a great example of how this is done. Now, there are hundreds of different kind of building blocks. We're not going to go into all of them, but here on the screen, you'll see the most common plugins and building blocks used in websites today. We're going to go through most of these today so that you're going to have a great feeling of what makes up a website. The most common thing you'll see are headers. Now, a header is a chunk of content at the top of the site. This is pretty universal. I can't think of many websites that don't have them. We not only expect them, but they're useful. It tells us where we are and often hosts some form of navigation. Now, you also get the branding in there. Normally it's the top left, but almost always on the top line. You have logos, you have typeface, maybe sub-brands. So, you might have it's like Gucci, and then Gucci might have a sub-brand and, they'll have like Gucci High Street or something below. I'm making things up right now. Okay, moving on. Amazon Prime is a good example. Prime is a sub-brand of Amazon. And we expect to find it at the top left, so our eyes tend to shift there. If it's not there, we tend to start looking around the top of the website to try and find it, and that causes problems with just getting in the way of our flow. More on that in part 2. Now, primary navigation is normally straight below the branding in the header. So it's connected, it focuses on the core elements of user engagement. You can get to all parts of the website very fast, and on small websites, you tend to see it on every single page. Now, as we'll see in part 2 of the video, that isn't always the best thing to do, but it's always there in some form. If in doubt, that is where your navigation should go. Secondary navigation tends to be more detailed and kind of hidden. Amazon put it at the bottom of the website. It gives you core activities that you're not going to ever have in the main menu. Very few people are really going to say, oh, I want to have a sell on Amazon as a key function, but you want to be able to find it quite easily. Putting it at the bottom is a good compromise. Just around the header, you tend to have search functions included. Again, they don't have to go there. Quite often they are on a different part of the page, maybe in the main center of the website. But when it's at the top, it's where we expect to find it. It's where our users will go to try and find it. Account information, obviously quite important, usually in the header as well. If you're going to have any kind of personalization, if you're going to have any kind of shopping or account, you will need this, and people look for it in the top. So it's somewhere where you can hide all the complexity away without having to worry too much. Now, navigation is the second most important thing. We touched on it already, so let's have a look at this. Now, as again, it's included in the header. You tend to have 3 types. So you're going to have tabbed navigation, drop-down menus, and trees. Tab navigation is very commonly seen. Big blocks. These are great for summarizing key tasks. So Oxfam, think about what they do, people getting involved, going shopping, and donating. Those are the 3 things the website wants to do. So effectively, you've got 3 websites. These very rarely have sub-navigation straight away. You'd have to go into that section to find the sub-navigation. So it's great at just propelling you towards the task you need to get to. And then in the sub-pages, you can start customizing and etc. Again, more on that in part 2 of this series. Drop-down menus you see a lot. Quite commonly, they're horizontal. It's the example on Amazon over here. They're very common for just any kind of desktop things and lets you drill down quickly. So if you were to try and present all the information on the Amazon website visually all the time, that wouldn't be very good at getting in the way of the main content. So it lets you hide the stuff you're looking for. The downside is that you can have lots of long lists in drop-down menus. So quickly identifying what you want, quickly spotting where you want to go, that can be pretty difficult. So bear that one in mind. Navigation trees is exactly the thing I was talking about there. So navigation trees, they're very common in that you do see them on very techy websites and early internet websites. They are becoming less common because they are very clunky. So they're almost vertically, as we see on the right here. You have a series of headers that you can expand and a whole drop-down list appears there. They take up a lot of space. They are pretty ugly. There's not much interactivity. Generally, they're not the best thing. But if you've got a techie kind of website where the user wants to dance around and move around lots of complex information on a page, that does work effectively. But if you're looking at general consumer-facing websites, so sort of e-commerce or Amazon, these are better to avoid. Now, footers, the third thing we're going to talk about. It's where developers like to just throw their junk. It's not something that users very often look at. They have function, but let's be honest, it's very abused. So when you look at BBC News, the footer content in this one's not too bad because they pretty much mirror the top navigation there. So once you've got to the bottom of the page, rather than scrolling to the very top, you can just go, oh, it's here. Now, obviously, think about your eye tracking. Your eyes are going to the bottom of the page, you're always searching downwards. The last thing you'll see is bottom of the page. So it saves you having to glance upwards and search navigation there. Maybe save you having to move your mouse. So there is a performance element involved by mirroring navigation at the bottom. Having said that, very few people ever look for it. It does give you an opportunity to customize, but I wouldn't really pin my hopes on the footer navigation being the savior that's going to make life great. This is lingscars.com. This is an example of just absolute trash pile. The developers have just dumped information all over the bottom. At some level, you could say legally, we have told people about things like the rationale and the car lease agreements, etc. I'd be very surprised if anyone has ever read this. You've got to be really dedicated, because even you see the big white space there, that's because the main content of the website is so far above, we've gone beyond it. The navigation on the left has taken over. It's just a terrible thing. So you must avoid dumping things at the bottom at all costs. Integrating social media into websites is an incredibly important part of the modern internet and modern e-commerce. So I'm going to show you an example of it for a website called Master of Malt. Now you got common elements, so simple links to social media websites. So you go over here, here's website. You have live feeds, so you can see tweets coming in, maybe live broadcasts, and the ability to share the page on your social network. That is really important because you can say, hey guys, I'm looking at this, what do you think? And then all your friend networks are now seeing that website. Let's now take a look at a video of how social networks work on this website.
I'm here to tell you about social media integration on this website called Master of Malt. So firstly, you can see on the webpage, you've got your standard stuff down here. I can click like, and my Facebook page is automatically liked Master of Malt's Facebook page. I'm now going to be inundated by their stuff. Now, if I click down here, I've got my standard social media links. So Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, Google+, it's still a thing. Just about, Reddit, and just old-fashioned email. So I can click on the little tweet, and that's going to take me over there. And what it's doing is not taking me to their website. It's more just like saying, hey, I want to talk about this. This is called electronic word of mouth. So you see someone talking about something online who's your friend, and you're going to believe them. So I'm just going to go back on that. This one actually is done better just here. There's a thing called Ask Whiskey Santa. Now, what is this? So I like whiskey, and I'm hoping my wife buys me this because, frankly, I don't want to spend £150 of my own money. So if I can't afford it and my wife can't afford it, what do? I'm going to click Wish. And it says, right, dear Whiskey Santa, I wish for Whiskey Advent Calendar. Right, let's click on Wish using Twitter. And here we are. We're back onto the same page 4 about Twitter, but you see it's filled in text for me. Dear Whiskey Santa, please may you put drinks by the dram, blah, 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 under my tree. I've been really good this year. So I'm just now going to tweet this out.
Okay, so that gave you good insight into effective social media integration in websites. The next thing to think about are photo galleries. So how we can show images in an interesting way. Now, often these are based on scripts that developers take and just embed in the website. Very few websites will actually create brand new scripts, brand new coding, which is why you'll kind of see the same forms of websites, photo gallery, over and over again. Now, if your photo gallery genuinely adds something unique to your website, you could consider a custom build. So if you're a photographer, for example, that could be a reason, but generally off the shelf is totally fine. You don't need developing anything good. Simpler forms are more effective. It lets people just get in, see the content they like, and get out. Now, you can also have banner galleries, so you have these large displays where you see one image at a time, as compared to these sort of tile arrangements you see here. These are great for showcasing key content where you want someone to really focus in. Flickr is a great example of that, whereas these kind of tile images are more kind of, let's get an overview of everything you want and let you choose the information to go further. Now, rotators are similar to photo galleries. They can be confused sometimes. These are when you have content that scrolls over time. Yes, they look like banner galleries, but they're not the same. It lets users interact with a frame of content at a time and maximizes the ability of prime real estate to work. What I mean by that is on websites you see on the right here, the highlighted area is very important. This is where users always look. You can only put one thing there, so having a rotational gallery, a sort of content rotator, lets you change that, so that real space is really well used. It's the video of the Loughborough University website for the library, and you can see how the content rotator works.
Here we are on the Loughborough University website, and we can see that there's a bit of information here about library workshops. There's some breadcrumbs here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them, and an opportunity to read more. But as I hover, you'll see that these are the markers to the right and to the left appear. If I just click on one of these, you should see, yep, there we are, we progress through our rotator. So rather than having the space dedicated to one form of content, we can see multiple forms of content. This can get quite annoying if it changes too fast, because frankly, I want to read this and consider it. Often it'll disappear before you see that. This looks interesting. Mendeley referencing software. You should all be using it. So click read more. And there we are. So it's got me to this very specific page in the website, which is interesting to me through the front page.
Okay, so that's how content rotators work and how they can help enhance your website. So moving on, forms. Now a form, we'll see them all the time. We fill them in all the time. This is where you enter content into your website. They're a common source of usability errors, so you need to have a detailed design approach and a lot of user testing to make them work effectively. Now, from now on, it gets a very bit faster, and we'll also rattle through the next 4. So tab content. What is tab content? It's when you have pieces which is very similar to navigation, but it's more kind of sub-pieces, and it lets you display information within a single form. So on this Scout's website, we have the main navigation at the top, and here we have a section, which I'll show you in pink, which you can choose between latest, news, and blog. This is less common. Today, it's more a relic of the older websites, so 2000s, because they tend to confuse users a bit, because we're thinking, well, I could just put this in the main navigation. Why do I have to break it out? It's hiding information that might be important. So I would avoid this if possible, but bear in mind this does still exist. Accordions are another way of presenting information. Now this is a lot more common and highly useful. So accordions let you expand and collapse information so that you can show the high level information here. So how to use a product, maintenance and cleaning, technical support. And then when you click on that, it expands. So here's a video of showing how an accordion works. Okay, so very simple for an accordion. It's just opening and closing content. The good thing about this is that it minimizes what you're presented with. So my path is, how do I clean the exterior? Obviously maintenance and cleaning. I can scroll down quickly and find my part I want to visit. Lightboxes, again, a bit similar to photo gallery. Well, they're a form of photo gallery, but rather than having all these pieces around it, we've just shown one image. So it's a pop-up window. It displays one bit of content that is important to you, removing all distractions. So this is great for refocusing on things that are important. It reduces lostness because you can't go anywhere else from here. Here's an example of lightboxes in action. Okay, so you can see that lightboxes are very effective at just saying, hey, here's some album art, let's look into it. So something that's really interesting and very, very easy to use. Plugins are an important part of web design. They're less important now because back in the original part of the internet, so the mid-90s, then Flash wasn't a really important part to let people put animation on websites in a way they could not do before. Now, Apple did effectively kill Flash in 2010, so Flash is no longer necessary to watch videos or consume any kind of web content. New open standards created in the mobile era, such as HTML5, will win. That's pretty much come to pass. Now the websites are coded in HTML5. We just don't need these plugins, but old websites still run them, and there's still a few things that animation plugins can do that HTML5 can't do. But always ask yourself, can I do this natively within HTML5? HTML5, by the way, is the programming script of the internet that we all use today. You need to be aware of plugins, but you don't need to be able to use them very effectively. If in question, if in doubt, don't use them. Now, here's an example of a website which is built in Flash, and you'd find it very difficult to build anything like this in HTML5, just native internet coding. So by abandoning plugins, we have lost some of the tools and some of the charisma of the internet. But overall, it's not a bad thing. We can live with it. So I'm going to go and show you this example of Clouds over Cuba.
My name is Eric.
Castro's
Irrelevant to the case.
Okay, so that gives you an idea of something which is actually a bit like a video game, really interesting to jump in and explore. That's a bit old now. I'm sure we will get back to that at some point soon, if not already. So moving on from there, the last part of these web features is video. We see video a lot. It's part of HTML5. We can embed it into websites without wandering. It just lets you display content in a way that you can't do any other way. So let's move on. Because we all use YouTube. You're watching a video of me right now. We all know the power of video. So it's a great thing to use and something that does need design around. So my mistake, got banner ads. Not quite finished yet. So what are banner ads? These are the adverts that you see around websites. Now, these often pay for websites to exist. So developers and website hosts, they make their money off banner ads if they're not selling products directly. You need to design them effectively, because if you don't design them, they won't work very well. This is a good example of banner ads inserted into website, because it's all about tying a tie. So here's a website, choose the tie you want to learn to tie. But the first thing you see where your eyes will land is that banner ad for Squarespace. So it's interrupting your flow and delivering information. If that banner ad was not placed in the right area, then it would not work. So you must make sure that they inform the user, they must work well, but not annoy them. And that takes some designing. So those are the 13 key web components. So we're going to have a look about how you design for the web. This is not going to go into a really practical guide, but more things you should really be aware of. So we consider software, working resolution, grids and responsive design, design trends, and placement norms. So software is what you build the website in. So if you're an amateur, something like Wix or Squarespace, there's many of them out there. These are excellent because they remove the need to learn to code and go further. Dreamweaver is one professional software made by Adobe. There's lots out there, and by the time you see this video, a new one could have come to prominence. An important thing to think about, rather than the nuts and bolts of building, is where the content comes from. So if you're doing photo editing, you use Photoshop. If you are making illustrations and vector graphics, you're using Illustrator. Quite commonly, people try and use Photoshop vectors and Illustrator for photos. You should not do that because they're not designed for that. Once you become proficient at the software, you'll understand why Photoshop is the best photo editor, even though many features are included in Illustrator. When you want to prototype the website, it's better to use something like Adobe XD or Sketch, Exure, or any of those other prototyping softwares, rather than using something like Wix or Dreamweaver. The reason is that the prototyping software, while it won't give you a fully working website, will let you work out what is and is not effective and what you should focus on. Now, the resolution of images is very important. So when you produce any content for a website, you want to choose a resolution of 72 dpi. Now, when you're making items in Illustrator or Photoshop, you can export them at any DPI you choose. Quite commonly, people say, 300 dpi is great because that's print resolution. But that means that when you upload to the web, 228 dpi is thrown away. You can scale images down and you can get around that, but sometimes that can cause dithering and information to be thrown away, and just generally, it's not a good idea. So on the right, an example of an image of my son at Halloween, which I'm very proud of. The top one is at the correct resolution. The bottom one, I've gone through a process of downsampling and expanding, etc. And you see it's become pixelated. The reason it's pixelated isn't just that I focused on his face, it's because information has been lost. In a photo, once information has been lost, you can't put it back. You can upscale and try and simulate it, but it's not a very good idea. So always produce your graphics in 72 dpi at the right size from the start. Design grids are a very important part of when you design a website. So things aren't just placed randomly, they are placed on a grid system. So when you use a grid, you will have everything just fit together really nicely. There's good flow to it, there's a harmony to it. Unsemantic is a really common grid system. I'd really recommend you look at the website. And it bases everything on a 960 pixel width. So here's an example of a grid system for a website.
Okay, on the left here, I've got the BBC News website and an example of a grid system. So we can see at the moment, this big pink one in the center is about 33% of the content, or 380 pixels. As I drag the screen divider across, you'll see this changes. So it goes to 370, excuse the blurring, that's macOS, 390, and it's just going down. You'll see though, when I get to about here, something changes. It snaps into two columns of 50% all over. So the actual content of the web page is is changing depending on the size of the screen I'm viewing it in. This means I can view the website in a mobile browser, so iPhone Safari, or I could view it in an iPad, or view it on a website or a laptop it's going to look good no matter where I see it. This is responsive. And the reason we've seen these websites here is you can see this example of grid system in practice. So you can see the columns, everything lines up very nicely, just like in a web page. So on the right hand side, you've got all these sort of, links down to various pieces. If I drag it along, you'll see, yep, we had a shift there. It's shifted into a different grid system, and go across more and shifts again. Can we get another shift? And yep, there we are, into a single column. So the content moves around and resizes depending on what we're seeing. And that's the power of this.
So there we are for the grid system. Hopefully you can see how it's an effective way to change your content automatically without having to redesign or scale your website in any other way. Gov.uk is a great example of a responsive website. I'd recommend you go and have a look at it. It works in everything from the mobile side on the far left right through to widescreen desktop on the right. It will move content around in a way which is effective for whatever platform you're viewing it on. Fourth thing to think about are design trends. So these are visual styles that people are finding attractive and interesting at this moment. Styles and trends do change a lot. So don't think about it as something you should learn now and just keep on applying forever. You've always got to say, well, what's on trend at the moment? It might change from month to month and year to year. So anything I show you is just an example. So one thing that's trendy at the moment are elements that are overlapping. So we see lots of text overlapping and colors and graphics are layered on top of each other rather than stark differences. We have soothing colors, so nice light and pastel colors are very popular at the moment. Gradients of colors, so blending is very popular. These three, even though they have quite striking, vibrant colors, they are still relatively soothing, but not quite in this trend here. So don't take everything as complete canon. It's just suggestions of how you could do stuff. Simplicity is definitely a trend. It's been a trend for quite a while. So having simple content which is not over complex is generally working well for your users. Then you have placement norms. You have where things are commonly found, and you can say, well, when people go to your website, they're expecting this kind of content. So you're expecting a logo at the top left, you're expecting navigation along the top, you're expecting a login at the top right, you're expecting submenus on the top left. All these great things that if you're moving the elements around somewhere else, people might go, well, where is it? And get lost. So that's the end of part 1 of week 6 usability principles and practice. Coming in part 2, we're going to be looking at the effective navigation structures. So this is taking a deep dive into navigation and really helping you decide how to navigate around, how to get your users from your homepage to the content that they want at the time they want. If you found this content useful, please like, comment, and subscribe, and listen to the Usability podcast, broadcasting every week on Apple Music, Spotify, Himalaya, and wherever you find your podcasts. I've been Dr. Chris Parker. Thank you very much.